Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 66, Dvārakā, the false Vāsudevo, verse number 5 and verse number 6. No, I'm sorry, 4 and 5? It's 4 and 5. Dūtas tu dvārakām etya. Sabhāyām āsthitam prabhum. kṛṣṇaṁ kamala-patrākṣaṁ. Rāja-sandeśam abravīt. Dūtas tu dvārakām etya. Sabhāyām āsthitam prabhum. kṛṣṇaṁ kamala-patrākṣaṁ. Rāja-sandeśam abravīt. Dūtas tu dvārakām etya. Sabhāyām āsthitam prabhum. kṛṣṇaṁ kamala-patrākṣaṁ. Rāja-sandeśam abravīt. Ladies?
kṛṣṇam kamala-patrākṣaṁ rāja-sandeśam abravīt.
Anyone else? Dūtaḥ, the messenger. 2. Then, dvārakām, at Dvārakā, etya, arriving, sabhāyām, in the royal assembly, āsthitam, present, prabhum, to the Almighty Lord, kṛṣṇaṁ, Kṛṣṇa, kamala, of a lotus, patra, like the petals, akṣam, whose eyes, raja, of his king, sandeśam, the message, abravīt, spoke. So what is happening now, this false Kṛṣṇa named Dvārakā has sent a messenger to Kṛṣṇa to deliver what he is, or think he is. Translation: arriving in Dvārakā, the messenger found lotus-eyed Kṛṣṇa in his royal assembly and relayed the king's message to that Almighty Lord. Text number 5, translation. On Dvāraka's behalf, the messenger said, I am the one and only Lord Vāsudevo, and there is no other. It is I who have descended to this world to show mercy to the living beings. Therefore, give up your false name. Short purport. Inspired by the goddess Saraswati, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives the real import of these 2 verses. Quote, I am not Vāsudevo incarnate, but rather you alone, and no one else are Vāsudevo. Since you have descended to show mercy to the living beings, please make me give up my false designation, which is like that of an oyster claiming to be silver. The Supreme Lord will certainly comply with this request. Om Gyan Timidandasya Ganajana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudavani Puchadine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Pastyatya De Satarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Vacha Vatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Shri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Kṛṣṇa Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here this personality who is the king of Karusha, and he has some patronizing followers who, because he has some power, they say he's God, and he believes it. And now he's acting and trying to act in that position as being the Supreme Lord. He knows that Krishna is on the planet, and he's, in this section here, he sends a messenger to explain what he is and what Krishna is not. So, of course, Goddess Saraswati, she makes a very interesting adjustment, which is really not an adjustment at all, it's actually the fact. Because everything about Krishna is auspicious. And there can be nothing inauspicious, nothing unbeneficial, nothing that is not glorious. But at the same time, she takes the words of this personality, Dvārakā, and actually turns it into a glorification of Krishna. Because there's only one thing you can do is glorify Krishna, because Krishna has no faults. And therefore all the faults that are being directed towards Kṛṣṇa is another form of glorification, because Kṛṣṇa is absolute in all qualities. He's Bhagavan. He's full in all of the six opulences. So any statement related or directed towards Kṛṣṇa, actually in one sense, is actually a glorification of the Lord, because everything about the Lord is glorifiable. And so giving this Pondraka an opportunity to get purified, he gets the chance to criticize the Lord. So in one sense, this is actually leading to his purification. So this concept of imitation of the Lord is the principle of material existence. Material existence actually is an attempt to play the role of Pandraka. And there's different levels of Pandraka. I remember when I first came in contact with Krishna consciousness back in 1972, 73, there was this personality. He was a little boy, 11 years old. He had a peacock feather, yellow garments, blue shirt, and he was saying that his mother actually said that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so this actually became somewhat accepted in many parts of the United States at the time. And he was going around, he had some mystic power, he was touching people on the head, and they were getting some electrical charge, something like an electrical charge. And so he became somewhat popular, and he had a following. I remember I had just joined the temple in Denver, Colorado at the time. And somehow during that time when he was in his glory, something went wrong, because he had a brother, a little older brother, who now was making a claim that actually my younger brother is not God, but I'm God. So the mother was there, and she had to figure out which one was the actual God. So it actually came back to India, because they were all from Hardwar, and it came into a court case. Who is God, the older brother or the younger brother? Hare Krishna. And it went to one, I'm not sure of the exact penal program that it went through, but at one point the judge said, "This is ridiculous," and he threw the whole thing out. And so his reputation was pretty much whatever reputation he had. And devotees used to talk about him too, to Prabhupada. And one time Prabhupada said, Prabhupada, you know Prabhupada, he gets right to the point. He said, you should kick on his face with boot. You should pass urine in his face, Haribol, and you should throw a pie in his face. He said all in one sentence. So one devotee thought it's an instruction. Really. So he made it a point to carry out Prabhupada's, what we say, analysis of this personality. And he had a big audience. He was on stage, many of his followers there. The devotee sat in the front row. He had a big chocolate cream pie. And when the Supreme Lord came on stage, after he spoke for a few minutes, this boy got up. He was in the front row, and he just threw the pie right in his face. There was about 700 people in there. Most of them were all followers. And of course, that caused the turmoil. They grabbed the devotee, brought him in the back room, and they said, "Why did you do that? He's God." The boy said, "If he was God, why didn't he stop me?" They said, "Well, that's his leela." That was his leela. You hear that when they can't really explain anything that is contrary to their philosophy, they call it leela. That's supposed to give some kind of concession. So this person, he's actually still on the planet. He's an old man now. He lives in California. He's got a different posture now. He's more like a businessman. I guess when you go from God, then you go into, business, because you can't make much money as God, so you have to actually take up some occupation. So there's so many of these. I remember when I was in New Vrindavan, we had so many coming to New Vrindavan. New Vrindavan was a bastion of controversy within ISKCON. There were many problems. So one day, these young people came to our temple, and they were distributing flyers. And the flyers said that Kalki Avatar has appeared in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he's giving darshan every night at 7 o'clock, so please come. So we told him, he's a little early. Kali Yuga hasn't really gotten that far advanced yet, at least at that time. So this was another example of, and there's so many. I mean, there's so many, even today you see so many charlatans. I won't mention his name, but there's one who's very popular in India today, and he has a large following. Some of our devotees came, and they sat in his satsang, and they had an opportunity to ask a question. These devotees were actually quite wealthy. They were big businessmen, and they were the Hindujas, actually, the two brothers. And they said to him, "What do you think of Rama and Kṛṣṇa?" And he said, "It's simply some mythology. There's no such person as Rama and Kṛṣṇa." So this goes on in the name of, and people believe. These people have so many thousands and thousands of followers. As Prabhupada would say, in this age, very few really want the absolute truth. People want something better, something mixed, something in a compromised way. And so these cheaters are here to fulfill that desire to follow some spirituality and at the same time get some material benefit from it. So there's so many. But the whole principle that is being presented here in this particular is that the whole material world is just an imitation of Kṛṣṇa in different ways. So as devotees, our position is always to remember that we are the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we can only serve the Supreme Lord by serving the devotees who serve the Lord. Gopi Bhatter Padagamalayur Dasudasa Anudas. Lord Chaitanya gives the formula. He doesn't give any designation, although he is in the role of a sannyasi. And he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he says, "I'm the follower of the damsels of Vrindavan." Dasa Dasa Anudas. So in that way, because the desire to enjoy, even if it's done in the mood of devotional service, is a little bit of the prandraka mood, to enjoy separately from Kṛṣṇa. Because that is what we say, the principle that keeps one into the material world is the principle that brings one to the material world. So this principle of enjoyment, which is the nature of the soul, but it can only be satisfied in relationship to Kṛṣṇa by devotional service. Desire to enjoy separate from the Lord is an anartha. There is no such thing as enjoying separate from the Lord, because everything is within the context of the Lord, as Krishna says, Yegatam mam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajami aham mama vartanam artante manusya partha sarvasyaha. So everyone is following his path, but then it requires a little explanation. And what is that? That there are two paths that Krishna lays out: the path of bhakti marg, or the path of auspiciousness, the path of coming back to one's real constitutional position of humble servant to the Supreme Lord, or the path that the material energy has provided through the agency of the Lord in order to try to enjoy separately for the Lord. So those who take up that path of material life, they're actually little Pandrakas running around, sometimes little Hiranyakashipus. So this is the mood. And this is the age of Kali, so there's so much of that, because materialistic society encourages that mood of enjoyment in all. We have to be very careful as devotees not to develop that idea of trying to enjoy Krishna consciousness. People, Prabhupada would say, don't try to enjoy the spiritual master. Don't try to enjoy, try to serve. And he says enjoyment automatically comes by the mood of service. Because the principle of enjoyment is the nature of the soul's existence. And when the soul is engaged in serving the Lord in devotional service, then one can open up the path of unlimited enjoyment. But a material enjoyment is just an anachronism. As it's explained, what looks like material enjoyment is just one step above a material suffering. But it's another form of suffering because it ultimately leads to suffering. But one time Srila Prabhupada was talking about the mode of goodness. And he was just explaining what are some of the qualities of the mode of goodness. So one of the Prabhupada's disciples, I'm not sure, one of our godbrothers, he said, Srila Prabhupada, it explains that the mode of goodness, there's happiness in the mode of goodness. Prabhupada said, yes, but there's another characteristic of the mode of goodness, and that is knowledge. And he says that knowledge teaches you there's no happiness. So that was the end of that argument. So what is this happiness? It's just some temporary relief from the suffering of living in the material world. So this material energy is designed to frustrate everyone's ability to be happy by creating this false sense of happiness. And you'll see, Pandraka, this is a really interesting section of the Bhagavatam, how when Kṛṣṇa, I don't go too far ahead in the verses, when Kṛṣṇa heard the statements, and when he saw Pandraka, he actually came to fulfill Pandraka's desire. So when he saw Pandraka, he was just dressed exactly like Kṛṣṇa. Kṛṣṇa just laughed. Not only did he laugh, it says he laughed loudly. Oh, okay. That's supposed to be me, right? And so, I remember, I'll just tell another story about another person I came in contact with who was also of the same mindset, but in a different tradition. It's again, many of the deviations that sprung up in our movement came from New Vrindavan, but that's a history that is gone now. Let's hope it's past. But there was one personality who came to New Vrindavan, and he claimed to be Jesus Christ. Haribol. And no, of course we didn't believe him. And he was associating with the devotees, and he was saying, he was giving blessings, I bless you, to be a good follower of me. And so this was going on for some time. So we decided, as a community, he's causing a nuisance. So we decided to ask him, so since he's Christ, he should perform some austerities. So we asked them to leave. And in New Vrindavan, you're in the woods pretty much, and it's all just roads. There's not too much. You have to really walk to get to any civilization. So he voluntarily left, and he's walking alone, and I'm driving my vehicle down the road, and he's hitchhiking. So there's Christ, he's hitchhiking. And so I thought, all right, should be a little compassion. So I picked him up. He got in, and I said, well, it says in the scriptures that that on the hands of Christ there is the stigmata, the marks of crucifixion. So let me see the stigmata on your hands, then I can agree. Then you're, at least theoretically I can agree. So he goes like this. That's what he did. And I said, I didn't see anything. He said, I only show it once. So I said, I think you should walk. I think you need some more purification. So he was gracious enough to leave He had a nice nature. He was actually quite a nice person. But he still was in this, mindset. I think the statistics are, at least this was in 1985, that there's 2,500 people in the United States who claim to be Christ. Hare Krishna. But I think maybe the numbers who claim to be Kṛṣṇa or an incarnation in Kṛṣṇa in India might supersede that. Because Prabhupada said they're on every corner. Bhagavan. So, but this principle, and Prabhupada describes that, and of course it's mentioned also in the Shastras, that as one makes advancement in devotional service and starts to purify themselves from all the gross forms of sense gratification, then that purification has to go internally, where we start really diving deep into the more subtle aspect, profit, adoration, distinction, all of these more subtle principles that come as we say, the mind attached to some kind of position or some idea for profit. And it's mentioned that the last snare of Maya, that a devotee may be making progress in Kṛṣṇa consciousness, but unless they're very diligent, I guess that's the word, diligent, to become very introspective, to be careful not to fall into the subtle aspects of Kṛṣṇa consciousness, wanting some position, some remuneration, some glorification, then one may also think that I'm an incarnation of the Lord. That's happened. Even in our Kṛṣṇa consciousness society, devotees make great strides and actually make a lot of progress, do wonderful service, but at some point they fall down because of those subtle attachments. Aranga Tarangini, it's called by Bhakti Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. The actual way to understand one's progress is the mood of service, how eager one is actually to engage in devotional service, how eager one is to purify their existence through taking up the process of Kṛṣṇa consciousness. If one gets position, if one gets facilities, if one gets pecuniary benefits, there's so many ways that Kṛṣṇa somehow or other allows this devotee who is making advancement. He reciprocates. If the devotee thinks it's because of me, then that becomes what we say, a tinge of anartha, and it leads to a sense of pride. And that pride has a tendency to think oneself as being better than someone else. And thinking oneself better than someone else is actually contrary to one's position. as Lord Chaitanya gave the position. He said, Trinadapi Sanichena Tayorivasa Sahishnuna Amaninam Amanadena Kirtaniya Sadali. The scriptures say, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami says, take this verse and wear it on your ornament, string it on the necklace of the holy name and wear it as your ornament. And by practicing that mood of devotional service, one will never become falsely proud of one's success in devotional service. Because, and Krishna's, he's interesting, he gives a lot of reciprocation. Sometimes he gives material benefits. A devotee gets some remuneration, some praise, some glorification. And these things, actually, if they build up, they can lead to finding fault with others. And when you find fault with others, then all of a sudden, then your mind becomes disturbed and you can't really practice devotional service properly. One should see that even if one sees the faults in others, one should not take it seriously. One should completely push that aside and look for the good qualities. And there's some statement in the Shastras, I can't remember, I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He gives a whole principles of different stages of how a devotee sees others. And he first starts off with the Daksha mentality. What was Daksha's mentality? He was so qualified, and he was beautiful. He was very handsome. He was the son of Lord Brahma. He was in an assembly. And when he walked into the assembly, there were many great personalities. Lord Brahma was there, many great souls, Bhrigu Muni, and Lord Shiva was sitting in meditation. When he walked in, it says, it mentions in the Bhagavatam that everyone got up automatically. It was just like they didn't even have to think. It was just by his presence, he inspired people to honor him by getting up. But Lord Shiva didn't. Lord Shiva was in meditation. So in one sense, he didn't even notice Daksha coming in. And because he was so elevated in his position, Daksha, he became offended because Lord Shiva didn't respect him, or at least honor him. And he started to find fault with Shiva. So what happened, of course, that cost him his head, and then he had to take another birth. That whole story is mentioned in the fourth canto, the beginning of the fourth canto, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But he started to, someone, I think it was Tamal Krishna Goswami, he asked Srila Prabhupada, what's the difference between fault finding, calling a spade, and blasphemy? Blasphemy means you have many good qualities, but I look for some fault. And I broadcast that fault as being your character. That's blasphemy. Although there are many, many good qualities, there may be something there that is a little bit, sometimes it's created. I think I heard one statement, this is not a criticism of Russia, but the KGB used to say, give me a man and I'll give you a crime. Give me a man and I'll give you a crime. In other words, we'll find something that is criminal. So that, the mind can do that. They can take even something that is not and turn it into something opposite. So blasphemy. And calling a spade is to see things as they are. And fault finding is just people have good qualities, people have faults. Try to see the good qualities, forget about the faults. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati says that if the faults of others disturb you, Look inside yourself and see what is it about yourself that's becoming disturbed. Pretty powerful statement. So what he's saying is that why are you being disturbed by what you see as faults in others? There must be something in you that is causing it. Of course, there is another level of understanding, and that is the spiritual master, the parents, the teachers have to somehow or other correct their disciples, make sure their disciples. It's not fault finding, it's actually service in the name of correction, pointing out things that are not beneficial. But these persons have a position to do it as a service to others. And then, as Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur goes on, he says even higher than that is one who sees another person's faults as potential good qualities. A person may be, how can we describe it? Maybe be very passionate. Because we all have different natures. And there are people who have more of the Kshatriya mood, passionate type of nature. And someone might find some fault with that. Well, they're not so peaceful, they're not so humble. But then a person who sees that, well, that quality is actually a good quality because when it's used in the service of the Lord, it can do wonderful service. So one who sees a person's faults as being potential good qualities. So we have the one who sees, we have the dakshas who look for faults. We have those who see both faults and good qualities side by side and focus on the good qualities. Forget about the faults. And then we have those who see faults as potential good quality. And the highest is one who doesn't see faults at all, even if there is faults. Of course, you might say that's a Mahabhagavat. But also, we can also adopt that mood that actually, when I'm seeing faults in others, what am I seeing? I'm seeing through my own eyes. So my eyes may be faulty. We can see like that. Sometimes people come to me, I get it a lot, they say, I can't stop finding faults. I said, don't worry about it. Just, you can use it to progress in devotional service. Just keep finding faults in yourself, and you'll have a field day. I don't usually say that, but So what the point is that there are those who have that tendency and they can't get rid of it. So it actually becomes beneficial to turn it inside and then make progress in that way. So this Pandraka, he thinks that he is the Supreme Lord and Kṛṣṇa is faulty, and so he's making his statement. But everything about Kṛṣṇa is wonderful because there's nothing. What is negativity? Negativity is anything that is outside of Kṛṣṇa, and what is outside of Kṛṣṇa? Nothing. So negativity is just some false sense of concept that is the opposite of what is beneficial. So it's like, just like you say, darkness, what is darkness? Darkness is the absence of light, it has no substance. What is bad? Bad is the absence of goodness. So everything is good, but when goodness is not there, it is called the opposite, or bad, or inauspicious. So if we bring principles of devotional service back into the forefront, then everything becomes auspicious. And what is the most important of all principles? Well, that's debatable. But the most important principle is to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead by serving those who are worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Gopi Bhatir Padaga Malayar Das Das Das. Okay, I have no idea what time it is. That's 8:50. We have 10 more minutes? Should we stop here and see if there's any comments and questions? Yes, Prabhu. Back there, the Panchagoda. Okay.
So Maharaj, as you said, back in the 70s, there were many, many different spiritual groups, you know, Rajneesh and Guru Maharaji and this one and so many. So the persons who were attracted to them, they had some spiritual inclination, or they're just, or they were also cheaters in the sense that, I mean, how is it that we became fortunate to be able to follow Prabhupada and not get trapped by some other yoga leader or group? I mean, is that just our karma, or is that some desire, special mercy? How does that work?
I've heard statements in relation to that, is that they want something that is beneficial on a material level, and at the same time they want to be spiritual. They're not looking for the truth, they're not looking for the absolute truth. They're not or even if they're not looking for the absolute truth, they have some material motivation. And they're also enchanted by these people who have the ability to speak. Many of these persons have the Shakti. It's like a mystic power that they can control people's mind. There was, as you mentioned, one of them, Rajneesh. He was really powerful. When he would speak, he was from Pune. The whole place was pin drop silence. I mean, there was no. He would attract people's mind. He had such power. But then he got proud of his power, and then he started a movement that was bogus. So some of these people do have mystic power or some element of Shakti where they can speak and attract people's minds. I mean, there are devotees in our movement now who actually were followers of some of these other groups. But then they were enlightened by what they were experiencing, and then they, of course, gave it up and came to Kṛṣṇa consciousness. So that's one thing. But Prabhupada said if they want to be a cheater, Kṛṣṇa will send them a cheater. That's what Prabhupada said. So and there's that point also. Anyone else? Yes, Jamuna? Okay, Jamuna, we'll wait for you. One more.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, please
Hare
accept my
Krishna.
obeisances. It's wonderful to see you here in Vrindavan. So you had said that when we chant or when we perform devotional service, we should not be trying to enjoy ourselves. So when we preach, we tell everyone, chant and be happy. Mm-hmm. When we chant Hare Krishna, we want to feel happy. But I feel like that goes against the principle of wanting to enjoy when we do not enjoy. So how can we develop the mood that we are chanting for Krishna's pleasure, not for our own pleasure?
Mm-hmm. There's a purport to that statement, chant and be happy. Want to hear the purport? By a senior godbrother of mine, I heard it. He said, chant and be happy means if you're looking for any other happiness anywhere else, you won't be happy by chanting. In other words, to chant and be happy, you have to put your full concentration, attention, and desire on the holy name, and don't look for happiness anywhere else in any situation. That's what it actually means. But the mood, what you're saying is actually the principle is that the whole process of bhakti centers around giving pleasure to Kṛṣṇa. So the mood of chanting should be, I'm offering this to you, my dear Lord, as my way to show my love for you, to show my appreciation, to show my devotion to you. So that mood should be there. That this is for your pleasure, my Lord. This is for, we also say maybe for the pleasure of the devotees. So we want to serve the devotees, so when we engage in devotional service, we think how to please the devotees. And pleasing devotees in the way that is in line with the principles of spiritual life, that's also pleasing to Kṛṣṇa. So yeah, we shouldn't think, well, now I'm going to chant and I'm going to be happy. And therefore I'm chanting and I'm not happy. That phrase is bogus. Someone might think like that. Well, we are saying chant, be happy, but I'm chanting and I'm not being happy. Well, you're approaching it in the wrong way, that's why. Try to make Kṛṣṇa happy. The soul is part and parcel of Kṛṣṇa, and therefore, when we are, as someone asked Prabhupada, how do you know when you please Kṛṣṇa? When you do some devotion, Prabhupada would say, you're pleased. You feel pleasure in the activity of trying to please Kṛṣṇa, and when Kṛṣṇa is pleased, because the connection is there. And you're also pleased. So we can find satisfaction in trying to please Kṛṣṇa or trying to please Kṛṣṇa's devotees. And that actually gives more satisfaction than trying to become happy ourselves. Because there's a greater happiness in giving pleasure to others, and that's the mood of bhakti. Yeah, love means to give pleasure to the person you love, and you become happy when they're pleased by what you offer to them. That's love. Love is not like what I get out of it by doing something for you. Love is the happiness we feel when someone else is pleased by what we offer to them. That's actually love. Yes, and Jamuna's waiting here.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Maharaj, I've wanted to know this for quite some time now.
You wanted to what?
There's a question I'm going to ask, and this is something I wanted to understand a bit more deeply. That I've been hearing this since I joined 30 years ago, that the last snare of Maya, which you also reminded us, is that we think we are God.
Or an incarnation.
So, Maharaj, then you also mentioned in your class that how for devotees also we need to be careful that we don't think like this. So, Maharaj, I wanted to understand.
What's the way to prevent that from happening?
No, what is it within a person that they may want to be?
The soul is part of Kṛṣṇa. The soul is very powerful, extremely powerful. It's almost as powerful as Kṛṣṇa, but not quite. We're part and parcel of Kṛṣṇa. We have Kṛṣṇa's qualities in minute quantity. So the soul is very powerful in all aspects. So as it awakens its nature, these qualities come to the forefront of one's consciousness. And so to get enamored by that, but that can be prevented. So it doesn't, so it doesn't go to that limit. It can be prevented. You want to know how it can be prevented?
First, I want to know, how does one identify that this is actually happening?
Yeah, that's a good question. There, sadhu sangha, association with devotees, because in the association of devotees, if you're proud, or you're arrogant, or you're critical, you can't stay in the association of devotees. There's a quality that allows that to one to appreciate and take benefit from the association of devotees, and that is in the mood of serving the devotees. So keep good association. Sometimes we say take association from those who are more advance. But in general, association is the principle. And that can be, you can start to see when you are acting wrongly in the association of devotees, you start to see it easier than when you're not so much in that association. Or when you're in association, just like sometimes it happens, the spiritual master is surrounded by disciples. And that's okay, but it's not always healthy to have that association. Better to associate with peers and also those who are also more advanced. Because the disciples will tell you how wonderful you are. Oh, Guru Maharaj, even if you're wrong, you're still right. Hare Krishna. So that's not. So keep good association, keep devotee association. And if you're in a mood of service, when you're with the devotees, then you won't fall into that consciousness. And you can be able to recognize it also. How can I serve? That's the mood of a devotee, always thinking, how can I serve? As soon as we get into the enjoying mood, we can make mistakes. And we can act and do things that we're actually later on we're sorry from. Association. Is that okay?
It's wonderful, Maharaj. If nobody has a question, can I ask just a small connected question?
Connecting question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, is there any way that one can, if somebody is very introspective by nature, and are there any clear signals that one may be thinking like this?
Yeah.
For one, so say if somebody's interested.
Yeah, when you look at the other devotees and they look at you like, what's wrong with you? Then you know you're off. And even if they don't say anything, you can pick up the signs, Hare Krishna. Is that okay? You can't lose if you stay in the association of devotee in the mood of trying to serve. And if you can't figure out how to serve, then always chant Hare Krishna. Then your mind is always connected nicely. There's that story, Lord Chaitanya, when he met the Vāsudevo leper in Kurmakshetra. It's a long story, but Vāsudevo wanted to see Lord Chaitanya when he was traveling. Vāsudevo was very polluted. He was quite deep in his leprosy. So he knew he couldn't associate with the Lord. He just wanted to see Lord Chaitanya. But Lord Chaitanya passed and he didn't get to see him. Now, Vāsudevo was a devotee and he was feeling so unhappy. The Lord came and I'm so fallen, I'm so used. He started criticizing himself. I missed. And he was feeling bad. And then the Lord, who's, he's the indwelling super soul of everyone, understood. And he came back and he came right where Vāsudevo was. He saw Vāsudevo. There's devotees have drawn a picture of this particular pastime. He runs up to Vāsudevo and he embraces him. And all of his leprosy is gone. Now his body is whole. And of course his body, which all the sores touched Lord Chaitanya's body. So he was feeling really bad. So the Lord looked at him and said, Vāsudevo, you don't look happy. And he said, my dear Lord, my polluted body touched yours. And the Lord said, Vāsudevo said, because you have shown me your mercy, I will become proud. And if I become proud, that's worse than death. He was thinking like that. And then the Lord said, do one thing. He said, always chant Hare Krishna. And he says, if you're always chanting the holy name, you'll never become proud. Hare Krishna. Because you can't chant the holy name if you're proud. You may make some sound, but that's all. Okay? That's the best I can do.
Wonderful.
Any other questions or comments? Way in the back there, yes. Let me know if I'm taking too much time. What, last question? Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Maharajji for the wonderful class, I'm sorry. When someone declares that he is God, we take it for sure that he is crazy, he is nuts.
Right.
Okay, but there are some people who take Lord Shiva to be the supreme personality of Godhead. Even he is, Lord Shiva, is greater than the Lord. Yesterday, I had a hot debate with such a strict follower, rigid follower of Shiva. And I said that if you really worship Lord Shiva from the bottom of your heart, then he will guide you to worship Kṛṣṇa. But he said that while Ramchandra was trying to go to Lanka, and while Ramchandra was trying to go to Lanka by building a bridge, he worshipped Lord Shiva. So how to deal with those persons, those who take Lord Shiva as the supreme personality of Godhead?
The Prabhupada answered that same question in a letter, and then he said, yeah, Ram honored Lord Shiva because sometimes the Lord worships his devotee. So the pure devotee knows the mind of the Lord, so he explained, yeah, Ram did that just to honor his devotee, that's all. But that doesn't mean Lord Shiva was thinking that he is the supreme. He doesn't think he's the supreme. He offers prayers. The Bhagavatam is full of prayers by Lord Shiva to Lord Vishnu. Shiva worships Ram. Brahma Bole Chaturmukhe Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Mahadeva Panchamukhe Rama Rama Hare Hare. Yeah. So that little verse there, that Shiva worships Ram, not the other way around. But sometimes, as Prabhupada says, the Lord will honor his devotee. And then the people who don't have a poor fund of knowledge will think in the opposite way. They take that one incident and make that the standard for understanding. And so they liked it. Just like people say, well, Lord Ram, he ate meat, so we can eat meat. So then Prabhupada would say, all right, well then Lord Ram built a bridge over the ocean. And if you want to eat meat, first build a bridge over the ocean by just chanting mantras and getting rocks to fall in the ocean and make a bridge. People want to imitate, Lord Kṛṣṇa by dancing in the rasa dance, or imitating the rasa dance, and Prabhupada would say, and then let's go over downhill. So people pull out these little things and they make that the point of, and that means it's a cheating mentality. That's all it is. But if he's worshiping Shiva, let him worship Shiva. Because if he's actually worshipped Shiva, as you mentioned, Shiva will bring him to the Supreme Kṛṣṇa or Ram. good. Okay, I think this is the time we have to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki